My name is Heather Burns. I'm 39, a mail carrier in rural Kentucky, and this past Christmas, my teenage daughter slept in our car because my family said there wasn't room for her inside. Not at the table. Not in the guest room. Not even on the couch. They made space for a cousin's +1 and somebody's coworker, but not for the girl I've raised alone for 15 years. And the worst part? I saw it coming. I just didn't want to believe it. Before I go on, drop a comment if you've ever told yourself, it's fine they didn't mean it. Or worse, if you've ever watched your child try to earn love from people who only offer crumbs. What happened next taught me that silence isn't strength and keeping the peace sometimes means starting a war. Let me take you back to where it began. The casserole dish was still warm in my hands when I passed it to Tessa. Sweet potato with brown sugar and cinnamon, just like Mama used to make, except this time, it was my handwriting on the recipe card. Wrap it tight in foil so it doesn't slide. The dish is real glass, not one of the cheap ones. I reminded her, as if the casserole was the biggest thing I was worried about. Tessa smiled and took it carefully, cradling it like it meant something. I got it, Mom. You're worse than the customers with broken snow globes. Her new green sweater hugged her shoulders just right, and the silver hoops I gave her last year caught the porch light. She looked older, poised. Like someone trying not to show how much she hoped tonight would go well. You remember the roads by the Hollister farm get slick this time of year, I said, folding her flannel coat over her arm. And watch for deer. Mom. Her eyes said the rest. I'm fine. Let me be fine. She'd only had her license for 2 months. And it was just a 20-minute drive. But she was my baby, no matter how old her license said she was. I hesitated. Again. You're sure Grandma said to come? That she knows I'm working and you'll be alone? She called me herself. Tessa nodded, brushing her hair behind her ear. Said she'd love for me to help with dinner prep, and she told me to wear something nice. Her smile was so hopeful it ached. I didn't tell her what Grandma said to me. Of course she should come. It's Christmas. My mother had snapped on the phone earlier that week. It's a shame you have to work, but I suppose someone has to. That tone. Half pity, half judgment. It was her signature. Still, she confirmed the time. Told me to make sure Tessa brought a dish. And to dress appropriately. As if my girl didn't always look presentable. I told myself it was just her way. I told myself a lot of things. Now, standing on our porch with the cold air leaking through the storm door, I stared at Tessa like I wanted to stop time. You'll text me when you get there, right? First thing, she promised, then paused. Do you think she'll like the photo frame I made? She'll love it. I lied, because that's what mothers do when the truth might hurt too much. She leaned in to hug me, and I held her longer than usual. I love you, Tess. Love you too, Mom. She got in the car, balanced the casserole on the passenger seat, and pulled out of the driveway with the same careful confidence she used when parallel parking between 2 mailboxes last month. I stood there until her taillights disappeared past the oak tree at the bend. Then I walked back into the house. I reheated coffee. Let it go cold. Packed my work thermos. Checked the time, checked my phone, checked the weather. And then I saw it. On the kitchen table, tucked beneath the envelope of Christmas cards I hadn't mailed yet, was a folded name card. One of the ones my mother uses every year, place settings with gold trim and fancy cursive letters. This one said, Tessa, in my mom's handwriting. Then scratched out. Rewritten underneath. Reverend Paul. I stared at it. I didn't move. She made the cards days ago. She always did. And she changed it. For a guest. I pressed my palm flat over it, as if that could undo what I'd seen. As if it could shield Tessa from what might already be waiting. I told myself maybe there was another chair. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe. But deep down, I knew. I grabbed my bag and keys and headed to work. The roads were quiet. Frost feathered along the edges of the highway. Christmas lights blinked lazily from trailers and double wides as I passed, like reminders that other families were huddled inside together, warm and complete. I forced myself to focus. On routes. On deliveries. On packages marked fragile. But the only thing I could see was my daughter pulling up to a house where her name didn't belong at the table anymore. I pulled into Grandma's driveway a few minutes before 3, just like we'd planned. The whole house was already lit up, white lights along the porch railings, 2 glowing reindeer on the front lawn, and a wreath big enough to cover our entire front door back home. I paused for a second before getting out of the car, watching the windows flicker with motion. I took a breath. Then I picked up the casserole dish and the little bag of gifts I'd wrapped so carefully. A scented candle for Grandma. A coffee mug with a fishing pun for Grandpa. Small things, but I'd picked them myself. The front door swung open before I even knocked. Oh. Grandma blinked at me like she wasn't expecting me just yet. Tessa, you're here early. It's 3, I said, holding up the casserole like proof. Well, come on in, she said, stepping aside. Shoes off, dear. We just had the carpets shampooed. The house smelled like cinnamon and lemon polish. It always did this time of year. Familiar, but kind of sharp. Grandpa waved from the den and helped me set the casserole down. He gave me a quick side hug before returning to his carving station. Smells great already, kiddo. Thanks, I said, trying not to notice that his hug lasted maybe 2 seconds. In the kitchen, everything was buzzing. Aunt Mallory breezed in with her big sunglasses still on top of her head and her twins, Ethan and Zoe, right behind her dressed in matching plaid. Hey, Tessa, she said with that tight smile she always used. Your mom working today? I nodded. Yeah, double shift. She just hummed, like that was unfortunate but expected. Then I saw them 4 people I didn't recognize standing near the back door, chatting with Uncle Craig. Suits, loud voices, someone with a monogrammed briefcase sitting on the counter. Grandma leaned over. Some of Thomas's colleagues. They're in town without family. Last-minute add-on, but what can you do? The more the merrier, right? She laughed like it was a joke, but I noticed her eyes scanning the dining room. Then the long table. Then the chairs. I followed her gaze. There were 12 places set. China. Crystal. Gold-trimmed name cards at every setting. I looked for mine, instinctively. I'd helped her design those place cards one year. Used to love seeing my name in that cursive gold. But I didn't see it. Not anywhere. Grandma noticed me looking. Tessa, sweetheart, she said lightly, guiding me toward the kitchen island. I was thinking, since there's so many adults at the table, and you're such a good sport, maybe you wouldn't mind setting up your plate over here by the garage door. She pointed to the kitchen counter. It faced the garage. Not the living room. Not the table. Just a small overhang beside the fridge where Zoe's art projects usually lived. Oh, I said. Sure, I didn't know what else to say. I carried my casserole over there and started helping her reheat it. Zoe was already placing napkins at the table, matching ones. I offered to help, but she waved me off. No thanks. Grandma told me exactly where everyone goes. Everyone, I guess, but me. Still, I smiled. I always smiled. By 4:30, the house was full. Laughter, clinking glasses, perfume, heels on tile. Grandma was in her element, floating from person to person, offering refills and compliments. Aunt Mallory was bragging about Zoe's grades. Ethan showed his new smartwatch to the men from Thomas's office. They all called him Champ. I checked my phone once, just to see if Mom had messaged. Nothing yet. When it was time to serve dinner, the table filled quickly. Grandpa carved the ham at the head. The extra guests sat near the middle, next to Zoe and Ethan. I stood to the side with my paper plate, waiting for someone to say where I should go. Nobody did. So I went to the kitchen counter. I tried not to notice the way the group's laughter drifted farther away, how I couldn't really see anyone's face from where I sat. Just backs of heads and elbowed conversations I wasn't part of. Someone came in for seconds, one of the office guys. He looked surprised to see me. Oh hey. Didn't realize there was a kids' table. He smiled. It's just me. Zach. He laughed awkwardly and grabbed more mashed potatoes. Then another guest came in, and while reaching for the wine opener, he glanced at me and said, "Are you helping out tonight? Or just sneaking food?" He grinned like it was funny. "I'm family," I said quietly. He didn't respond. I finished half my plate and pushed the rest aside. My stomach felt tight. I tried to tell myself I wasn't hungry, that it was just the noise. Or maybe the quiet. After a few minutes, Grandma came in, cheeks flushed and smiling. But when she saw me still sitting there, her expression changed. "Oh, honey," she said, brushing her hands down her apron. "You're still here?" I blinked. "I mean, yeah?" She glanced at the fridge, the counter, then toward the dining room. "There's just so much happening. It's hectic with the guests and the dishes and well, maybe it'd be better if you came back another time. We can have a quieter dinner together next week, I stared at her. She smiled, like she'd just offered me a warm favor. My mouth went dry. "Okay." I grabbed my coat and purse. No one followed me to the door. No one asked if I was okay, if I had gas in the car, if I'd eaten enough. They didn't even ask if I made it home. I was halfway through my third neighborhood loop when my scanner buzzed. It wasn't a package notification. It was a text. I reached into my coat pocket and saw her name flash across the screen. "Coming home, don't worry about me." That was all it said. No emojis. No punctuation. Just flat. At first, I thought maybe dinner ended early. Maybe she got tired, maybe they dropped her off. But then a second text came in. I left on my own. And my stomach went cold. I pulled over next to a row of mailboxes and tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Nothing. I turned my hazards on, put the truck in park, and just sat there with the phone pressed to my ear like it might give me answers if I waited long enough. Me fingers shook. Tessa never left early. Not from something like this. Not unless something had gone really wrong. I called once more. Finally, she picked up. "Hey," she said, too calm. Too careful. "I'm okay." I exhaled, relief colliding with fear. "What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tessa, are you driving?" "Yeah, I'm almost home." "What do you mean you left on your own? Did someone bring you out to the car? Did something happen?" There was a long pause. Then she said it. "Grandma said there wasn't room." I blinked. "What?" "She told me it was too hectic with all the guests. That maybe it'd be better if I came back another time. She said, next year might be easier." End of full. Next year. I gripped the steering wheel with my free hand, my knuckles whitening. She actually said that. Yeah. Her voice cracked barely. But I heard it. And then Uncle Thomas laughed. Said I could always sit in the car like a stray if I was hungry. I closed my eyes. The edges of my vision fuzzed with heat. I couldn't breathe for a second. I asked if I could still eat in the kitchen, she continued. Grandma said I was making the room feel crowded. That it might just be easier for everyone if I headed out. Silence stretched between us. Tessa, did anyone check on you? Did anyone stop you from leaving? Number. My throat tightened. No one said anything. I don't think Grandpa even noticed. Mallory just looked at the floor. One of the guests joked about leftovers. I swallowed hard. Where are you now? 10 minutes out. I'm being careful, I promise. Okay. I want you to text me the second you pull into the driveway. And leave your location on until I'm home. I will. Another beat. Mom? Yeah, baby. I'm really okay. Just tired. I think I'm gonna heat up that leftover pasta. You shouldn't be alone. I know. I didn't know what else to say. I didn't even know what to feel: shame, rage, heartbreak. It all sat in my chest like wet cement. After we hung up, I sat there in the truck for another full minute. Frozen. The scanner buzzed again, reminding me I still had deliveries to make. Still had packages sitting in the back that needed to get to front porches before nightfall. I stared out the windshield, the frost starting to gather along the edges. Then I pulled back into gear. At the next house, I dropped a small box marked fragile on a porch covered in inflatable snowmen. It felt cruelly ironic. Inside someone's warm home, lights twinkled. A turkey scent curled through the air. Laughter filtered through the window. Meanwhile, my kid had just been turned away like she didn't matter. I reached for my thermos. The coffee was cold. So was I. I kept moving, because I had to. Because leaving mid-route without notice could cost me hours I couldn't afford to lose. Because responsibility has never once waited for emotion to catch up. But inside, something had snapped loose. Something quiet and sharp and final. They told her there wasn't room. Not even at the kitchen counter. Not even after she made them gifts. After she drove herself there, after she wore the sweater she bought to look presentable. They knew she was coming. They planned around her. They just didn't plan for her. I reached the last cul-de-sac just after sunset. As I stepped out into the cold with a padded envelope in hand, my phone buzzed again. Home. Pasta is fine. I'm okay, love you. I stared at the screen, reading it 3 times. Then I typed back. I love you too. We'll talk when I'm home. I promise. I stared down the dark road ahead of me. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about every moment I'd let it slide. Every joke I brushed off. Every cold comment I'd translated on their behalf. She'd tried so hard. And I let them make her feel like an afterthought. That's what haunted me most. I didn't cry in the truck. I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But I couldn't afford to let the tears come while I still had 37 stops left. So I kept moving. One porch after another. Drop. Scan. Nod. Repeat. The roads were slick. My breath came out in clouds. And every so often, I'd check my phone again, even though Tessa had already texted. Home. Pasta is fine. I'm okay. But she wasn't okay. I knew that voice. I'd heard it the night her dad moved out. The same flat tone. The same polite silence. Like she was trying to make her own pain smaller so I wouldn't feel it. That thought nearly broke me. By the time I reached my last delivery, my hands were numb and my stomach was sour from bad gas station coffee. I tossed the final package into the mail slot, climbed back into the cab, and leaned my head against the cold steering wheel. I took a breath. Then another. And then I texted Rachel next door. Is your porch light on? Tessa's home alone. It only took her a minute to respond. Already checked. Brian's bringing over a plate now. Chicken and green beans. I made that honey cornbread she likes. Want me to stay with her? I blinked at the screen. I didn't deserve friends like that, but thank God I had them. Number don't stay. Just thank you. She needs to eat. She needs someone. End of Force.com. Rachel just sent back a heart emoji and a photo. It was Tessa on the couch, holding a blue plastic container on her lap. One of those meal prep ones with 3 little compartments. Chicken, cornbread, green beans. She was still wearing the green sweater. She was smiling, kind of. At least with her eyes. Her feet were pulled up under her, and the television remote sat untouched beside her. I stared at that picture longer than I should have. Then I saved it to my phone. When I finally got home just before midnight, the house was still. The porch light was off, but I saw the glow from the living room peeking through the curtains. I opened the front door as quietly as I could. The scent hit me, first warm spices and sweet bread. Rachel must have brought over more than just a plate. I stepped inside and found the container, sitting on the coffee table, empty now, lid still off. Tessa was curled up under the flannel throw blanket I'd left on the couch. One arm tucked under her cheek, the other still wrapped around her waist like she was holding herself together. My throat tightened. She didn't even make it to her room. Just the couch. Just her coat, the blanket, and silence. I sat beside her and gently brushed her hair back from her face. She stirred but didn't wake. I wanted to wake her. To say I was sorry. That I should have protected her better. That I'd never let it happen again. But I didn't wake her. Instead, I whispered it. "I'm so sorry, baby. I should have known better." I sat with her for a while, just watching her breathe, watching her chest rise and fall under that old flannel. When I finally stood up, I walked to the kitchen and started packing up the last few Christmas things we'd planned to bring. The photo frame she made for Grandma, back in her school bag. The jar of spiced nuts she'd decorated, into the pantry. The tiny silver snowflake charm she'd bought for her cousin Zoe with her own babysitting money. I held it in my hand for a long time. Then I tucked it into the drawer beside my bed. It wouldn't be gifted now. I opened my phone again and stared at the picture Rachel had sent. I zoomed in on Tessa's face. The half smile. The tired eyes. Something in me clicked into place. This wasn't just one bad night. This was the last time I was going to explain away their behavior. The last time I'd tell myself we should keep trying for family harmony. They didn't forget her. They saw her. And they chose to treat her like a stray. That kind of choice doesn't deserve quiet forgiveness. It deserves boundaries. I sat on the edge of my bed, typing with steady fingers now. We're starting over, just us. I hit send. Not because she needed it. Because I did. The car was cold when I climbed in. Not freezing, but cold enough that my breath showed up on the windshield as I exhaled. I started the engine and turned the heat up, but the fan wheezed a little before the air kicked in. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet hum. It felt like something was still working. The casserole dish sat on the passenger seat, untouched. I'd carried it all the way in and brought it right back out. Grandma never even said thank you. I rested my hand on the foil lid and thought about leaving it behind. But something about that felt petty, or maybe sad. So I picked it up and placed it gently on the seat beside me. Like it still mattered. The driveway was full, so I had to reverse out slow. My fingers shook on the gear shift, not from the cold. From trying too hard not to feel anything at all. I drove with both hands on the wheel and my jaw tight. The Christmas lights blurred a little as I passed house after house. Porch swings. Kids' bikes. Blow-up reindeer wobbling in the wind. Everyone else was still inside. Together. I pulled into our driveway 15 minutes later, killed the engine, and sat there for a second. I didn't want to go in right away. I didn't want to have to say anything yet. So I stayed in the car. I reached for the Tupperware in the backseat, the one with pasta Mom made 2 nights ago. I opened it, pulled out a fork from the glove box stash, and balanced it on my lap. The plastic creaked under the weight. I took a bite. Still good. Still warmish. I flipped the visor down and looked at myself in the mirror. Mascara smudged. Nose a little red. I dabbed my eyes with my sleeve and took another bite. It tasted like garlic and butter and leftover hope. I looked over at the casserole dish again. The one we made together. Sweet potatoes with cinnamon and pecans. No one touched it. I slid it to the side, pulled my knees up on the seat, and leaned my head back. Then I remembered something. I reached into the center console and pulled out the folded note Mom left me a while ago, months ago, actually. It was a tiny square of lined paper, the kind she used to leave in my lunchbox when I was little. This one said, "In case of storms, you're stronger than you know." I stared at it, the corners soft from being opened too many times. I'd almost forgotten it was there. But tonight, I needed it. I held it in one hand and the fork in the other, eating slowly while the windows fogged around me. The silence wasn't heavy, it was just honest. No one was pretending. I didn't have to smile. Didn't have to ask to sit anywhere. Didn't have to laugh at jokes that hurt. I was just here. With pasta and a blanket in the front seat of a car. It wasn't ideal. But it was mine. I thought about the photo frame I'd made for Grandma wrapped in sparkly paper, sitting on the floorboard behind me. And the candle. And the snowflake charm for Zoe. They were all still there. Unopened. Forgotten. Like I hadn't existed in that house at all. I closed my eyes for a second and tried to picture something else. A table where people waited for me. A couch where I didn't have to earn a seat. A house where my name wasn't crossed out. The engine clicked as it cooled. The air smelled faintly like cinnamon and fabric softener, the kind mom uses on laundry day. And somewhere behind that fogged-up windshield, the world kept moving. But I didn't. I just sat there and let the quiet hold me. I folded the note and tucked it back into the console. Then I whispered more to myself than anyone else. It's just one night. When I walked through the door, the only sound in the house was the faint hum of the heater. I kicked off my boots and hung my coat by the door. The smell of sweet potatoes and cornbread still clung to the air like a ghost. It hit me in the chest. The casserole was untouched on the counter. And Tessa was asleep on the couch, curled into a tight ball beneath the old flannel blanket I'd washed that morning. One of her arms was tucked under her head, the other wrapped around a pillow, like she'd tried to hold herself together and gave up halfway through. I stood there for a moment. Then I sat beside her, real careful, like my weight might wake her or shatter the silence. She didn't stir. Her face was soft but pale. Her hair still pinned back from trying to look nice. Mascara faint on the edges of her lashes. There was a blue container on the coffee table. Empty now. Rachel's meal. Fork still inside. I picked it up slowly. The plastic was still warm. She ate alone. Here. On this couch. In that sweater. After they pushed her out like she was in the way. I traced the edge of the blanket and felt the tears come before I could stop them. Hot. Silent. Furious. I had known something like this could happen. My gut told me. The name card told me. And I still let her go. Because I didn't want to rock the boat. Because I was tired of being the difficult one. Because I wanted so badly to believe they would finally make room. They didn't. They never intended to. And now, my daughter, the same girl who'd saved up to buy Zoe a snowflake charm and spent hours crafting a frame for her grandmother, had been told out loud, in front of strangers, that she didn't belong. Not even at the kitchen counter. I sat there and cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not with noise, not with drama. Just tears running down, hot against my frozen cheeks. She shifted in her sleep. I wiped my face, smoothed her blanket, and whispered into the quiet. You are not a stray dog, baby. You're my daughter. I let the words hang there. Because I needed to hear them, too. I stood up and walked into the kitchen, grabbed a paper towel, and started collecting the things we'd packed earlier that day. The sweet potato dish, barely touched. The unopened gift bag for Grandma. The snowflake charm, still taped to a card that said, "For Zoe, love you like a sister." I put them all in a canvas grocery bag and slid it under the sink. Then I reached for my phone. I opened the group text I never used unless it was someone's birthday. Me, Mom, Mallory. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. Then I typed, "She's home, safe." For anyone who wondered. I hit send. No more explanation. No apology. Just truth. I sat back down on the couch, pulled the blanket higher over Tessa's shoulder, and looked at her again. She didn't flinch. Didn't roll away. She was asleep the way someone sleeps after holding themselves together all day. Like a thread pulled tight, finally let go. I reached for the little photo she'd texted me earlier, the one Rachel took. Tessa holding that blue container, trying to smile. I tapped it and let the screen fill with her face. Then I whispered to myself. This ends now. But I didn't raise my voice. Didn't storm anywhere. But I meant it. I was done being quiet. Done making excuses. Done calling disrespect just their way. Tomorrow, I'd start with my mother. And I wouldn't be sweet. I'd use words that didn't smile. And if that meant burning the whole damn bridge they built with expectations and guilt and keeping up appearances, so be it. I'd rather stand in the ashes with my daughter than sit at a table where she's unwelcome. The morning after Christmas, the house was still quiet. Tessa was still sleeping. I could hear the soft buzz of her white noise machine through the hallway. Her door was shut, but not all the way. Like she needed space but still wanted to feel connected. I made coffee the way she liked it when she was little, milk and a tiny bit of cinnamon. I didn't drink it. I just held the mug in my hands like it meant something. The kitchen table still had pine needles on it. A couple of ornaments had rolled into the corner, like they'd tried to escape the night before. I gathered them gently and dropped them into the old storage box we kept under the sink. The one labeled Christmas, Family. Then I reached for the decoration box from Mom's house. The one she sent home with me last year with the label still attached. Use this to make things festive, Heather. I know you're busy. There were gold bells inside. And a red ribbon I'd used once before, realizing it smelled like her perfume. I took a Sharpie, crossed out her handwriting on the lid, and wrote one word. Returned. Then I closed the box and set it by the front door. After that, I picked up my phone. No more thinking. No more over-explaining. I opened my contact list and tapped my mother's name. The phone rang 4 times, then voicemail. Hey. It's me. I'm not calling to yell, just to say what I should have said years ago. I paused, then kept going. You don't get to treat my daughter like an afterthought and expect silence. You don't get to make a room full of guests feel more welcome than your own granddaughter. You don't get to pretend this was a misunderstanding. I stared out the kitchen window. The frost was still clinging to the corners. She saw everything, and so did I. Click. I didn't wait for a callback. Next, I tapped Mallory's name. Text, not call. Because I already knew she'd spin it. We're not doing this anymore, I typed. Tessa deserved better. You saw what happened, and you said nothing. A few minutes passed. Then her reply came in. Heather, you're being dramatic. She could have said something. Nobody kicked her out. I read it twice. Once as the sister, who used to beg for her approval. Then again as the mother of the girl she stood by and watched be erased. I typed back. She did say something. With her presence, and you looked away. No reply. No, I'm sorry. Nah, you're right. Just the 3 dots. That disappeared. I turned off notifications. I walked to the couch and picked up the flannel blanket from the night before. Folded it slowly. Smoothed the edges like I was tucking in all the anger I'd carried for years. Then I sat down and stared at the picture frame on the shelf across from me. It held a photo from Tessa's 8th grade award ceremony. She was holding a certificate, smiling wide, and I was behind her, hand on her shoulder. Mallory and Mom were cropped out on purpose. That had been the first time I realized our support wasn't mutual. That their praise came with conditions. She's so well-spoken, Mom had said that day. You sure she gets that from you? I let it slide then. I wasn't letting anything slide anymore. I pulled the frame off the shelf, dusted the glass, and moved it to the hallway wall where I'd see it every day. Because that moment was ours. And they didn't get to rewrite it. Curtis texted me a minute later on of those funny memes about mail carriers and snowstorms. I smiled, barely, and replied. Thanks for checking in. He sent back a thumbs up and, burn the bridge if you have to. Just don't go back looking for it later. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I walked to the front door, grabbed the box labeled, returned, and opened the lid one last time. I pulled out the gold bell ornament. It had Tessa's name written on it in glitter from years ago. Probably the only thing Mom had made with her by hand. I held it in my palm. Small. Pretty. Meaningless now. I set it aside. Then closed the lid again. That box wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. And I'd decide what stayed. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon rolls and garlic butter. We hadn't meant to cook that much, it just sort of happened. I pulled out what was left in the fridge, and Tessa offered to chop carrots while I boiled pasta. No big plans. Just 2 people trying to fill a quiet house with warmth. We didn't talk much. But we didn't have to. The silence wasn't cold anymore. It was healing. Halfway through layering the baked ziti, I caught her watching me. Not in a suspicious way. Just quietly observing. Like she was still deciding if this was real. You want to light the candles? I asked, nodding to the drawer near the sink. We've still got a couple left over from Thanksgiving. She hesitated, then nodded. I like the pumpkin spice one, she said, almost like a question. Perfect. I smiled. I never liked it anyway. She grinned a little at that. Tiny, but real. The table wasn't fancy. Just 4 chairs, none of them matched. One leg on the old wooden one was still uneven from the year Tessa tried to use it as a step stool to reach cookie mix. I didn't fix it. I just slid a folded magazine underneath, like always. We set the table together. 2 plates. Paper napkins. Dollar store glasses. And in the middle, the small ceramic dish she made in art class last year. The one that leans too far to one side but holds tea lights just fine. Is this okay? She asked, standing back and brushing her hands off on her jeans. It's more than okay, I said. Before she could reply, the door knocked twice, then a pause. Rachel. She stepped in holding a casserole dish and a grocery bag. Don't shoot, I come bearing spinach dip. I laughed, and Tessa gave her a shy wave. Behind her, Brian and Michael followed, each carrying soda and a stack of board games. I told her we weren't crashing, Rachel said as she pulled her coat off. But then she said you probably had enough food for a football team. She's not wrong, I said. They settled in like they belonged here. Like there hadn't been a question about it. Rachel set the dip on the counter and gave Tessa a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. You good, sweetheart? Tessa nodded. Yeah. Then, softer. I'm glad you're here. Rachel smiled, then said what I didn't know I needed to hear. We show up for the people we love. Tessa looked down at her plate. But she was smiling. Curtis called just before we sat down. Save me some leftovers, he joked. You don't even have to label them this time. You'll get the good corner piece, I promised. We sat around that table, me, Tessa, Rachel, her boys, and passed paper towels and casserole like it was sacred. No matching silverware. No name cards. Just enough. I watched Tessa pick at her pasta at first. Then she went back for seconds. When Michael asked about her favorite movie, she told him. No hesitation. When Rachel offered more dip, she said yes. When the conversation turned to New Year's, she didn't shrink. She leaned in. At one point, I caught her laughing at something Brian said. Not a polite chuckly, real, shoulder-shaking laugh. That sound was better than music. Later, when we cleared the plates and poured sweet tea into mismatched mugs, Rachel raised hers slightly and said, to showing up. Everyone clinked their glass against someone else's. Tessa's hand lingered in the air for an extra second. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me, then clinked mine. Hard enough to be heard. It was the 3rd day after Christmas when she showed up. I was folding laundry on the couch, the kind of quiet, regular chore that makes you feel like life is starting to stitch itself back together. Tessa was in her room, music playing lonesome indie playlist she'd found on Spotify. She'd been humming a little lately. Not always, not loudly, but enough to let me breathe easier. Then came the knock. 3 soft raps. Hesitant. I peeked through the front window. Mallory. Holding a pie. Of course. I didn't move right away. Just stood there, still as stone, staring through the curtain like maybe if I waited long enough, she'd disappear. But she didn't. She shifted from one foot to the other, looked down at the pie tin, then glanced toward the driveway like she was debating retreat. I opened the door. Not wide. Just enough. She blinked like she hadn't expected me to answer. Hey, she said. I thought I'd drop this off. She held up the pie like it was a peace treaty. Apple, she added, like that changed anything. I nodded. She waited. The silence between us buzzed. Then, behind me, Tessa's voice floated in from the hallway. Who is it? Mallory flinched a little. I stepped aside without thinking. Come see. Tessa rounded the corner, still wearing pajama pants and an oversized hoodie. She stopped when she saw her. Mallory offered a small, stiff smile. Hey, Tessa. I just wanted to stop by. Say hi. I, brought pie. Tessa didn't move closer. She didn't shrink, either. Just stood there, arms crossed loosely, calm. You can sit down if you want, she said finally, but not at the head of the table. Mallory blinked. What? Heather didn't say a word. I let Tessa speak. You laughed, Tessa said. When Grandma told me there wasn't room. I heard you. Mallory's face fell. I didn't mean, she started, then stopped herself. I didn't know what to say. Tessa nodded slowly. You could have said this isn't okay. Or at least looked me in the eye. Mallory looked down at the pie. I'm sorry, she said. For what it's worth. I was scared to push back. I know that's a lousy excuse. Tessa didn't answer right away. Then she reached out, opened the screen door, and pointed to the bench beside the porch steps. You can sit there. Mallory blinked again. On the porch? Yeah, Tessa said. This is where you watch. Not where you speak for us yet. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Mallory stepped outside and sat on the bench, pie still in her lap. I don't know how to fix this, she said softly. But I know it's broken. Tessa tilted her head. Did you bring Zoe a new snowflake charm too? Mallory's eyes widened. She told me she lost it the same night. I didn't know it was from you. It was, Tessa said. She opened it after I left. Mallory looked away. I used to think Mom's approval was the safest place in the world, she murmured. Turns out it's just the most expensive. I stepped outside finally and stood beside Tessa. You're not getting an easy fix, I told her. That's not what this is. I know, Mallory said, her voice low. I just didn't want the last word between us to be silence. Tessa glanced at me, then down at the pie. Can we eat it? She asked. I shrugged. Probably. Tessa turned back to Mallory. Thanks for the pie. But if this is about making yourself feel better, don't. There. Mallory nodded slowly. It's not, she said. Or I'm trying for it not to be. Tessa looked at me again, then walked back inside. I stayed on the porch. Mallory didn't look up. I didn't hug her. But I did say, you can call when you're ready to have a real conversation. One where my daughter's name isn't avoided. She nodded again. Okay. I stepped back toward the door and paused. And Mallory? Yeah? Next time, bring cornbread. She actually likes that. We met at the Bean and Biscuit on a Wednesday morning. Neutral ground. No garlands, no casseroles, no guilt-slicked holiday smells. Just cheap roast coffee and the hum of ceiling fans that had been around since the Clinton administration. Tessa and I arrived first. She picked a booth in the corner, the one with the flickering light above it. I would have chosen somewhere less exposed, but she liked it. Said she wanted to see them coming. The waitress dropped off 2 waters and smiled without asking if we were waiting on anyone. She just knew. I stirred my coffee with one of those tiny red straws, watching the door. Tessa sipped her hot chocolate, 2 hands wrapped around the mug like it was armor. Then the door opened. My mother walked in like she always did, put together, polite, smiling a little too wide. Dad followed behind, quiet, distracted, holding his hat in his hands like he didn't know what to do with it. Wanda spotted us, straightened her scarf, and marched over. Well, she said, sliding into the booth, I'm glad you agreed to this. I didn't smile. Tessa didn't either. Dad sat beside her. He gave Tessa a nod, eyes soft, but said nothing. The silence stretched. Then Wanda cleared her throat and said, we didn't mean to upset her. Tessa looked up. Is that what you think happened? She asked. Wanda blinked. Well, yes. I mean, there were a lot of people, and things got a little disorganized. No one forgot me, Tessa said. You looked right at me when you told me to go. Wanda opened her mouth, then closed it again. Dad shifted in his seat. Tessa's voice didn't rise. It didn't waver. She didn't need volume. Her words carried weight. I sat in the car, ate cold pasta. Alone. While your guests drank wine and laughed at the table with my name scratched out. My mother looked like she'd swallowed something bitter. We didn't know, Dad mumbled. We didn't realize you'd already left. That, I said quietly, is part of the problem. Wanda reached across the table, not to touch, just to gesture. It was a mistake, she said. One we regret. But it's the holidays. Emotions run high. You know how busy we were. No, I interrupted. I know what neglect looks like when it's dressed up in good manners. She looked stung. I didn't flinch. Tessa reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a napkin she'd folded in half. She laid it on the table. Drawn on it, in black pen, was a tiny square table. 4 chairs. A fifth one, off to the side, circled in red. She didn't explain it. She didn't need to. Wanda stared at the sketch like it was in a foreign language. Dad looked down. We're not here to patch things over, I said. We're here so you know where the line is. Wanda straightened her spine. Heather, don't you think this is? No, I said. I don't. Tessa took a slow sip of her hot chocolate. Wanda fidgeted with the edge of her napkin. Finally, she asked, what do you want us to do? I met her eyes. I want you to show up when it's not convenient. To care out loud. To make space without being asked. Dad nodded faintly. And I want. I added, turning to him. For the silence to end. You're not invisible, you're just absent. That's a choice. He didn't argue. Wanda glanced around the room, probably hoping no one she knew was watching. Tessa stood up. We said what we needed, she told them. What you do next is your call. Then she slid out of the booth and walked toward the door. I followed. Before I left, I turned back. One more thing, I said, my voice low. If you want to be in her life, you'll need to sit at her table, not your pedestal. Wanda didn't answer. Dad gave a quiet nod. And we walked out into the cold. The invitation came home folded in half, creased from the bottom of her backpack. She left it on the kitchen counter beside a half-eaten granola bar and a pink mechanical pencil. No ceremony. Just paper, ink, and a quiet choice waiting to be made. I picked it up slowly. Student Showcase. Winter Voices. Thursday, 6:30 p.m., Middle School Auditorium. All are welcome to attend. No mention of what she'd be doing. Just a time. A place. An open door. Tessa didn't bring it up until dinner. Do you think we still have that blazer from last spring? She asked, chewing the last bite of pasta. The navy one with the inside pocket? I looked up. Yeah, closet in the hallway. Why? She shrugged. Just want to wear something that doesn't feel like me from back then. I nodded. Said nothing more. But something about that sentence stuck to me. Like she wasn't just choosing what to wear, she was choosing what to shed. Later that night, I heard her rustling in her room. Not hurried. Not nervous. Just intentional. I peeked in after folding a load of towels. She was sitting at her desk, shoulders hunched slightly, pen in hand. The lamp cast a circle of yellow light over the paper in front of her. I recognized it. The napkin. The one she drew the table on, circled the chair, laid down like a flag in that coffee shop. Now, she was writing on the back. Just names. One column. People who see me. The other. People who want me quiet. She didn't notice me watching. I backed away and closed my bedroom door. The day of the event, she didn't ask me to fix her hair. She did it herself. Loose braid, one side tucked back. She looked at herself in the mirror, turned a little, then nodded. You look good, I said softly. She smiled. I feel real. We got there early. Small town school events always fill fast, and neither of us liked being in the back anymore. The auditorium smelled like dust, old band uniforms, and anticipation. I scanned the rows of metal fold-out chairs. Some already taken. Some left empty with coats flung over them. A few marked reserved with typed slips of paper taped crooked to the backs. We chose one near the front. I asked, gently, did you invite anyone? She shook her head. Just Rachel and Curtis. I gave them front row seats. I smiled. Good choice. A few minutes later, Rachel arrived with Brian and Michael, plus a bouquet of grocery store flowers that still smelled like wrapping plastic. Tessa accepted them with both hands. Curtis slipped in 5 minutes before its starter jacket dusted with snow, grinning like he hadn't just nearly missed it. He gave her a wink. Wouldn't miss it. She took the stage third. No microphone. Just her voice. Clear. She didn't name names. She didn't talk about Christmas. She talked about what it means to choose your seat. To build your own table when you're not handed one. To invite people who bring warmth, not just names. No tears, no drama. Just power. And when she was done, the room clapped louder than I expected. Maybe they didn't all understand. But some did. That was enough. Afterward, we stood outside, bundled up under the overhang while the sky spit snow in lazy spirals. Curtis handed her a hot cocoa with extra whip. Rachel hugged her tight, then let go first. You did that, I said as we walked to the car. You built that room. Tessa nodded. Then reached into her blazer pocket. She pulled out the napkin, still folded, now soft and worn from being handled so many times. She handed it to me. I opened it. On the back, beneath the names, she'd written, "This year, I sit at my own table. And I know who gets a chair." I didn't say a word. Just folded it back up and tucked it into my coat pocket. And as we pulled out of the parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror. And saw her smiling. Not to me. Not to anyone. Just smiling. Because she'd finally chosen herself. It was Saturday afternoon, and we were rearranging the living room again. Not for guests. Not to impress anyone. Just because the sun hit the far wall better this time of year, and Tessa said she liked reading with the light behind her. So we moved the couch. Then the lamp. Then the side table that always wobbled unless you nudged it into the rug seam just right. I watched her step back, hands on her hips, eyes narrowing as she assessed her new little corner. You want me to bring in the green chair from the garage? I asked. She shook her head. Nah, I want one that fits. There was no bitterness in her voice. No undertone. Just clarity. I'll build you one if I have to, I said. She grinned. Deal. We were halfway through hanging up a string of twinkle lights when someone knocked on the door. Not a triple knock like Mallory. Not the cautious tap of someone unsure of their welcome. Just 2 knocks. Solid. Familiar. I opened it to find my father standing there. Hands empty. Jacket zipped, hat slightly askew. He looked older than I remembered, maybe because I hadn't really looked in a long time. Hi, he said. I didn't speak. He glanced past me, into the room where Tessa was coiling a strand of lights around her wrist like a bracelet. I brought something, he said, and stepped back to his truck. I didn't follow. He returned holding a small wooden chair. It was handmade, clearly so. Not perfect. One leg a little uneven, backrest slightly crooked. Painted soft sage green, edges gently sanded down like he'd done it by hand. She said she didn't have one that fit, he murmured. I figured I could change that. I swallowed hard. Tessa stepped into view behind me. She saw the chair. And she smiled. He didn't move closer. He didn't push it inside. He just set it down gently on the porch, gave her a nod, and turned. She called out before he reached the truck. Hey, Grandpa? He turned back. She walked forward, picked up the chair, and brought it inside. Didn't say more. Didn't invite him in. But she left the door open a few extra seconds. And that was enough. That night, we made soup and grilled cheese. Curtis stopped by to drop off a box of light bulbs I'd been needing since November. Rachel called to ask if we'd bring Tessa's banana bread to the Sunday potluck, said it was now unofficially required. I laughed. Tessa rolled her eyes in the way teenagers do when they're secretly proud. After dinner, we sat at the table. She in her new chair. Me across from her. She pulled something from the side pocket of her hoodie. The napkin. Edges soft now. Ink faded. She didn't open it. Just held it, thumb running along the crease. You keeping it? I asked. She nodded. But I don't need to look at it as much anymore. Then she slid it into the small box she'd labeled, Truths. Not trauma. Not scraps. Truths. I pressed my hand over hers for a second. Then we cleared the plates. Turned off the lights. and headed to bed. Before I shut my door, I peeked once more at the living room. Her new chair, her lights, her corner, her voice echoing still, even in silence. There was room now. Room for her joy. Room for her voice. Room for one more. And this time she was the one who decided who got a seat.